are being bold, trying an online debate, as well as doing a little bit of networking along the way. Mumpreneur, is it enhancing or detracting from businesswomen in our community? And we're going to then get a vote at the end on the basis of clapping. So everybody gets a vote. So the louder the noise, the better. Yeah. Starting off on the against team is Jo Plummer. So Jo believes that too many women in business doubt themselves. They watch quietly as others get the promotion and acknowledgement and opportunities and wonder silently, why didn't that happen to me? Well, stop wondering silently and watch quietly, because people that take action get noticed. And we know that Jo is a person that likes taking action. So having held many senior manager roles across corporate giants and now a part of a global business, as well as chair of Bar and Water and Geelong Football, Jo is a self-proclaimed equalist and a change agent. Her experience has led her to one simple conclusion, be the Energizer Bunny, no, that actions get results. So with that, I'll hand over to Jo to tell us why she doesn't believe that the word mumpreneur is helping or supporting women in business.
Thank you, Lisa. So let's start with a seemingly harmless definition. Entrepreneur, a person who has possession of a new enterprise, venture or idea and is accountable for the inherent risk and outcome. A mumpreneur is defined as a woman who sets up and runs her own business in addition to caring for her young child or children. Even in the first instance, these two definitions feel different, don't they? So, interestingly, on Sunday morning, when preparing for this debate, I asked my husband and my 12-year-old son, so what do you think of when I say the word mumpreneur? My 12-year-old said, I know, Mum, it's a housekeeper, isn't it? Not sure I need to say any more. However, having said that, my position is this. The word mumpreneur is a label that is exclusionary, polarising, irrelevant, patronising, and at best, unhelpful in the decade where gender equality is finally in the spotlight. It's also a term that helps society and indeed our politicians, policymakers, and big business avoid the awful truth. So allow me, Lisa, to unpack these two arguments a little more. Lisa hates it when I say unpack, just let you know that. So let's talk about labels for a moment. Labels can be helpful, right? They're used to identify something or someone to designate its origin, owner, contents, use or destination. However, we also know that labels can become a self-fulfilling prophecy as they unconsciously enter and define our psyche and bias, leading us to believe our role in a particular context. You've all no doubt heard before the consequences of labelling and consistently referring to our kids as lazy or naughty. You become what you are told if you hear it often enough. So why then is the label mumpreneur so unhelpful? It's unhelpful because most of us, men and women, wear multiple hats in business, in our community and in our homes. When I wear my business hat, I'm working to reflect an image of a professional businesswoman with a specific objective and call to action. So why would I need to define myself as a mum first and an entrepreneur second? Let's take a simple example of an introduction. And Kate, allow me to introduce you. Lisa, this will save you the bother later on. So this is Kate Engler, also known as the PR Antichrist. She is a highly sought after public speaker and the only Australian publicist invited to speak at the same event as the King of Publicity, Sir Richard Branson, on his visit to Australia in October 2001. Kate also shared the stage with numerous world-leading business legends. And I also happen to know that Kate has 2 children and is a great mother. Now, if I had started that introduction with Kate as a mumpreneur, before I share with you all of her amazing experience and achievements, I suspect a great many will have unconsciously made assumptions about her priorities and indeed the seriousness and magnitude of her experience and achievements as a businesswoman. Labelling Kate as a mum and businesswoman second is both irrelevant and unhelpful. The unconscious bias that Mumpreneur tag creates is a mindset of playing small. Is that what businesswomen want potential clients and investors to think? Is that what you want to think? That a limitless global marketplace has self-imposed boundaries. The very real emotion of mother guilt is a constant emotional and psychological handbrake that women in business work very hard to repress every day against society's norms. Do they really need the added burden of being labelled a mumpreneur? Which leads me nicely to my next key point. Mumpreneur is a term that helps society, and indeed our politicians, policymakers and big corporates, avoid the awful truth. Let me explain. Mumpreneur is a term often used to define a highly lucrative segment of mothers in small startup businesses. On the surface, it's a wonderful thing that women with young children have established a strong presence in the startup sector. And indeed, this is one of the fastest growing sectors in the first world economy. Combining the mum with the word entrepreneur creates a whole different spin because of the circumstances under which mumpreneurs build their business and the motives behind them apparently differ greatly from your average entrepreneur. And we only had to look at our little definition earlier to see that. So mumpreneurs are acclaimed to enjoy the flexibility of working from home and managing their work hours around their family. There is no doubt this dedication to both has seen many women run successful business ventures while being great mums. For many, the choice is based on practicalities. They want to spend time with their kids, childcare is too expensive, and workplaces are inflexible. Hence, the rise of mumpreneurs. This new generation is redefining the way women work and challenging the old stereotypes of how they are viewed by society. However, the awful truth is that the rise of this phenomenon is a direct result of long-term, systematic and belligerent denial of governments and big business and the requirement for real gender equality in the workplace, as both men and women need and want to participate in meaningful yet flexible work. In a decade where gender equality, coupled with the necessity for double income families, have never been more prevalent, policy, legislation, and big business have simply not kept up. Poorly understood, misguided, and inadequate attempts to achieve gender equality inside the corporate arena have driven women out of the workplace and into the world of business startup. This is the awful truth behind the rise of the mumpreneur. In concluding, the term mumpreneur is without doubt detracting from women in business, their experience and achievements, and worst of all, does mask the awful truth that the rise in the mumpreneur is a direct result of society's inadequacies. Thank you.
Very nice, Jo. Very nice.
Jeez.
And
you
so,
spare it, ladies? Come on.
no, the clapping comes later. So,
okay.
So in your argument, if it was entrepreneur mum, the entrepreneur comes first, then unpacked, it would be better?
No,
we're playing
still irrelevant.
We're playing with semantics. Okay.
Semantics.
So very, very nice, very emotive piece. I'll try not to be too belligerent in the introduction of Kerry. So our next wonderful speaker on the pro team, just to give us a different perspective, is Kerry, and she's one of the most passionate people I know. So Kerry is a speaker, an author, a coach, an event organiser. I bet she's been busily writing down all sorts of rebuttal points in that. A few years ago, Kerry was dealt a really tragic blow when her husband died suddenly, and she learnt firsthand how to transform her life. Today, she runs workshops and seminars to teach people that's the steps that will lead them from their crisis into a fresh new start. and she has the most amazing positive approach to things. And she works very closely with people to take them through that journey. And if I can share with you a quote, in all the different parts of my work, I help people to realise that they have everything they need now to follow their passion. And I think passion's a word that very aptly describes Kerry. She's busy writing a book called Unstoppable Freedom, and has already done one called Creating Your Infinite Self. So with that, I will hand it over to you to debate that Mumpreneur is adding value to businesswomen in society.
Thank you, Lisa. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, we're all good. Excellent. Thank you. That is a very flattering introduction, and I hope I live up to it. I don't disagree with a lot of the things that you've said, Jo. In fact, there's a lot of the issues that you've raised that I completely, passionately agree with. There is a massive disparity between the employment of men and women and in the workplace, and the positions that are held in management or leadership positions between men and women in corporate and business environments. So those things aren't in question. I think you've raised the question really well, Jo, that right here we are speaking about the significance and the effect of this label, and how this label is opening or closing opportunities for women. Because I think you really struggle in this circle particularly to argue that women have equal opportunity, that women are represented equally. That's not the debate here. The debate is, what is this word doing? And so some of the points you've raised, I must beg to differ. I fell pregnant when I was 18 years old and had my son at just 19. And so I come from a working class background. Now, for me, the idea that I could be a mum and a business person, when my mum, I'm the oldest of 5, had stayed home to work and care for us and not go to work. My dad was the single sole breadwinner in our family. And so that meant that I didn't have in my close circle of influence a role model of, what is this mum that also does business? What is this powerful woman that cares and loves me with the same sort of passion or investment that she does for a business or an endeavour outside of the home? And so for me personally, that pathway has been opened up by this sort of language. Now, as well as being the oldest of 5, working class family, I'm also a trained teacher, and I know the significance of language. The words that we use create realities, and the words that we use open up not only meaning, but entire discourses and places for us to share meaning and construct meaning and convey meaning. And so the idea that the word mumpreneur would be in some way detrimental, I think perhaps overlooks the central role that it plays in opening up an opportunity for every woman to see themselves as a business person, and to not only constrain or be restricted to that role of mum. So I love the merging that it gives, and not only for me personally in my journey as a mother and a business person, but then I think the role of that language in this discourse, that role of that word actually opens a pathway. You said that it was that the word is polarizing, that it separates the role of mum and entrepreneur. And I think the exact opposite. I thought it was very clever how you defined the word mum, mother, and of course the word entrepreneur, which is the key word in this sort of discussion. But here's the thing, I think the merging of those two concepts in this word is what does the opposite of polarizing. It brings this entire concept together, and it makes this idea of being a mother and an entrepreneur something that is married perfectly. And it opens up those two pathways for women in our culture, in this world, to participate in fairly and openly, and maybe starts to overcome that idea of mum guilt, because we all get to experience the fact that, well, I am a mother and I am a business person, and those two things can coexist. I'm very glad to hear you say that whether it was mumpreneur or entrepreneur mum, it kind of doesn't matter. Because I agree with you. The fact that it's that the way we've structured this, it's a very popular culture way to structure that language, isn't it? Mumpreneur, solopreneur, kidpreneur, you hear all of those. And I love the use of all of that language within this discourse, because what it does is open up pathways into the world of business, into this entrepreneurial world that we know and love, to people that perhaps traditionally within the constraints of our culture haven't had access to that world before. So I think not only does it open a pathway, but for women, particularly for mums, it helps us to overcome that guilt. So yeah, it opens up that language and helps us to give a pathway into opportunity. The reality is too, on this idea of labelling, that the reality is that the definitions that you gave us right there at the start, so wonderfully, Jo, open up the fact that they are the realities and the understandings that we already have. We already think of an entrepreneur traditionally in our Western discourse, as things have been up to now, where we're looking to change. They have been such that an entrepreneur is seen in this category as a business person. If you ask someone to describe an entrepreneur, I'm sure that the word man or male would come up for some people. But an entrepreneur looks like this, and then a mum looks like this. So whether we like it or not, labels exist. They already exist. And as soon as you use keywords like mum, business person, entrepreneur, a mother, wife, woman, there's a certain role or a certain picture that we have in our mind that's been conveyed through our culture. So instead of wanting to dismantle those labels and say that they're pigeonholing or putting a limitation on this area that we want to open up for women to improve our society overall, let's maybe go back behind that and say, hang on a second, this language already exists. Let's use this new word that we're creating, mumpreneur, and let's harness the power of labels. Let's make this part of the language that we use in our normal society. And let's use that to open up that discourse of a discussion that includes women in all levels of employment and all levels of management, all levels of business ownership and executive control of companies and business. So I think that's a really important distinction to make about the role of labels in our society, because it exists anyway. And in fact, it's the only way that we communicate and connect and convey ideas. Yeah, so there you go. You also maybe made a suggestion that the label reduces the achievements of women in business to something that, this is just what a mum does, or this is within its own separate subcategory of achievement. And again, I see it the exact opposite way. I think that when we say that there's a mumpreneur out there doing X, Y, Z, what it's doing is harnessing the power of that label, deconstructing the idea of what is a mum, what is an entrepreneur, recreating the meaning and creating a discourse and a discussion there, a place to celebrate the fact that these two things can come together, and women in those roles can achieve magnificent results. So I think it opens up the pathway to celebrate the achievements of women who love and nurture and care for their families with the same passion that they do their businesses. I have addressed the fact that it removes that mum guilt, because finally we've got a hat to wear. Finally we get to say, yes, I know I need to clean the toilet, or I know I'm going to pay someone else to clean the toilet. I know I need to tuck my child into bed, but you know, that either I can make my own rules in my own life, I can set up the structures in my life as a mumpreneur to create those opportunities to love and nurture my children in the same way that I can to run my business. And a lot of it does come down to that personal organisation and the structures, but all of that comes within the larger picture of our self-concept and how we see ourselves. So this idea of mum guilt, I think that the word mumpreneur opens up the opportunity for us to see ourselves in that light, that we get to wear all of those hats and we get to define what our life is and how it looks. I absolutely agree with you that that women in business, women in employment, women are coming up strong in increasingly large amounts in management roles and executive roles and in employment in the corporate sector. And you know what? In my mind, I just think that just proves this word is working. This word works. we can sit on our feminist soapbox and we can say all of these things about how we don't want to be put in a box and we don't want to have this label and we should be acknowledged for our own rights. But you know what? This pathway has been opened up with this word, and I agree with you. Statistics show that it is the fastest growing sector. Women in employment, women in business, go team, and I think that the word mumpreneur is opening up those opportunities, and it's absolutely working, because the role of this word gives rise to women's empowerment. Full stop. Women everywhere are following their passion now because they finally have words, they have language, they have a self-concept that allows them to jump in with everything they've got and pursue those opportunities that exist, because now this word exists. So I think maybe I've used up my little bit of time, but that's absolutely what I think. So thank you.
That's awesome, Kerry. I love the passion with which that was delivered. And I think we could all perhaps agree that your argument about mumpreneur embiggens the role for women. And I needed to bring that word out because it's part of my introduction to Kate, seeing as Jo stole most of it. And it's now my distinct pleasure to introduce Kate Engler, who, yes, we know as the PR Antichrist, that she runs this most amazing PR workshop masterclass where she puts people in front of all these senior journalists. So Kate's very much around allowing people in business to embiggen themselves, and she also likes making up words on the side too, and so showcase themselves, as well as being a wonderful mother of two. So with that said, I will let Kate have her say.
Go, Kate!
Thanks, Jo. Go Team Negative. No, I hope I equip this topic with the same aplomb that the two former speakers have brought to the table. I think there's a number of reasons why I don't believe that the word entrepreneur adds value. And I think I just wanted to pick up on the point that Kerry made about that, you know, what, now that we've got this language, it creates these pathways. And I don't think that women need a word in order to create a pathway. I don't think there's been a word that created a pathway ever. You know, I think it's my view. It's not the truth. It's just my view that what you need to create those pathways is drive and passion and focus and skill. And no word in and of itself creates the pathways. I think with the explosion of women in business, there has been this, you know, in a world that lives in 140 characters, because our attention span is that of a flea, if you can't sort of succinctly capture what it is that you are or do, then, you know, kind of we lose interest in listening, because, you know, if it's more than 140 characters, I can't cope. So this word has been manufactured to describe something that really and truly has been in existence for decades. I mean, my father-in-law's mother, so he's 62, just turned 62, and when he was a little boy, his mother was a dressmaker. Now, if you think back, you know, 55, 60 years ago, I wouldn't have thought of pigeonholing her as a mumpreneur. She was a seamstress. She was a dressmaker. She had her own business, and she carved out this amazing life for her and her beautiful boy. She didn't need the word mumpreneur to decide to become this amazing seamstress. She did it because she had skill and passion and drive and creativity. And that's at the heart, I think, of what creates the pathway forward. You know, I'm sure we've all met people that say, oh, I'm so sick of my job and I'd love to start my own business. How many of them have launched forward on the basis of, you just need to call yourself a mumpreneur, girlfriend, and away you go? It doesn't open pathways. respectfully, I say, and because it doesn't matter how much she wishes upon a star that she can create of her own business, just hanging a title around her neck of mumpreneur doesn't allow that. It is a vast array of other skills and attributes that open the pathway rather than the word. And I agree with you, Kerry, in that words are powerful, but it's a bit like, you know, women are in society, we are the largest section of small business registrants each year by almost 2 to 1. It's extraordinary. And so in this wave of women starting a business kind of before the mumpreneur word existed, I don't think we can now say they exist because the word mumpreneur came to the party to play. We were way doing our stuff before that word came to the party to play with us. And I think from my view, what that word does is it keeps people small. It keeps people small, and it has the sense in the broader community of being a hobbyist. What do you do? Oh, I'm a mumpreneur. And there's this sense that it's what you do in your spare time, because many mumpreneurs, you know, work from home, and I've had a home office. We're just about to relocate to a non-home office, which I'm having a few anxiety moments about, I must say, because for 16 years I've, you know, had the home office. So there's nothing wrong with having a home office, but I think when you marry home office with the word mumpreneur, it really does sound very startup-y. That's a made-up word, you can go with it. It sounds very startup-y, and it sounds very hobbyist. And I've met women who are, I'm thinking of 2 in particular, who are hugely successful on the international stage. They are just so impressive. And you speak with them about their growth and their expansion, and there is this sense with them that, oh, we're not quite ready. I mean, they're on the international stage. How much more ready can they be? But there's this sense that, and I do get the sense with them that their husbands sort of patting much, oh, isn't that lovely that the girls have got a hobby? That's lovely. And I just think they're just limiting themselves. And we have enough in our lives, mostly inside our own heads, to be honest, that keep us small. You know, I, as Lisa and Jo both know, I have many voices inside my head, but I'll only share with you about 2 of them. But one of them is called Huxley, and he's the little voice that tries to keep me small. And the other one is Madam Secretary, that often tells Huxley that he needs to shut up. And then there's a vast array of studio audience and, you know, other people in there that have an opinion. But Huxley is the one that tries to keep me small. And we all have our version of Huxley, that little voice that says, who do you think? You opening a business? And the variety of ways that those messages are conveyed when we're not being our kindest self to ourselves. So there's enough to keep us small. You know, the average woman earns 84% of the average man. There's enough to keep us small. We don't need a word that adds to the mix of smallness. We need to, as Lisa spoke about, I'm big into embiggening, which just is a made-up word that means to make bigger. Big into embiggening all that it is that you do and how you language what it is that you do. And I'm just so curious about why people would choose a word in all of the language that we have to choose from, and even those words that you may well make up for yourself, which is something we love to do. Why would you choose one that keeps you small? Because truly there's enough. There's enough in the world and in your own head that is really active at trying to keep you small and in your place. So let's not choose that one to add to the mix of that is already there. Let's broaden our thinking. Let's tap back into the original passion and focus and drive You know, I'd rather driverpreneur because, you know, really, if you don't have drive and you start your own business, then you go backwards really far. Let's choose a word that is embiggening, that is empowering, and that it doesn't pigeonhole in a small hobbyist way what it is these brilliant women are doing. Because let's be honest, they're brilliant. You know, women who run their own business and juggle, have that family juggle all the time. Brilliant. So maybe brilliantpreneur is a better word, or achieverpreneur, or, you know, anythingpreneur other than mumpreneur, because we as women deserve so much more than that. And I just want to make one final point. I think that if there was one word that removed mother guilt, therapists would be out of business. We as mothers, oh man, mother guilt's just everywhere, isn't it? And if there was one word to get rid of it, therapists would hunt you down and troll you and stalk you. I can see you laughing there, because they're making a fortune trying to help women overcome this mother guilt. And it reminds me of that really funny Bob Hart skit, Stop It. You know, stop it, just stop it. You know, oh, I'm frightened of being buried in a box. Stop it. You know, stop it or I'll bury you in a box. If you haven't seen it, please look it up. It's hilariously funny. But the reality is that the only people that can stop mother guilt is us. And it's, I heard this wonderful word. It is another made up word, not by me. I cannot take any credit for this one. It was actually by Sarah Napthali, who wrote Buddhism for Mothers and Buddhism for Mothers of School-Aged Children. And I heard her interviewed on a podcast upon which I was asked to comment and share my experience of Sarah's work. And she said the most important thing that mothers can bring for themselves isn't mindfulness, although that's very important. It's actually kindfulness. And I think if we're able to bring kindfulness to the mix, that's a far more effective word in overcoming the mother guilt than mumpreneur will ever be.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Awesome. Nice work, Kate. So we've now just gone through even more creation of words. So we really appreciate that that mumpreneur was keeping us small and start uppity, which I think is pretty cool. And we're going to move towards kindfulness. And it was very interesting that you, perfect segue really for Kirsten to come on board, because Kirsten actually is a clinical and forensic psychologist with 20 years of experience in her profession. That's right, Kate. Nice. So she's the owner of Life Resolutions Morley and Wembley and has a team of 6 psychologists working across both practices. She provides supervision for new graduates and offers 4 internships practice for masters and doctoral students. Kirsten's areas of interest include perinatal mental health, motherhood, parenting, anxiety, depression, trauma, family breakdown, relationships. And Kirsten also owns The Conscious Mother, which is a heart-centered business supporting women in all stages of the motherhood journey. So I imagine she's going to reference the mother guilt, and I'm sure she's got a perfect rebuttal to the previous one. So with that said, I'll hand over to Kirsten. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yep. You're on.
Hi, everyone. How are you going?
Hello.
Kate, thank you. Thank you for beginning the conversation about mother's guilt and the fortune I'm making from helping women overcome their mother's guilt. I really, really appreciate it. Oh, there's so many things I can say. And I will try not to, I guess, deviate on the topic and perhaps delve too much into mother's guilt, because that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about the term mumpreneur. But what I will say is that I agree with the author of Buddhism for Mothers, because we do know there's enormous amounts of research that is now telling us that self-compassion is a far bigger, or has a far bigger impact on well-being than self-esteem. So we need to be building what I like to call our self-compassion muscles in order to not only feel good in our lives and feel content in our lives, but certainly it is one of the antidotes to mother guilt. And that is where I earn an income, not a fortune yet, I earn an income for sure as a psychologist. Okay, but what I guess I wanted to say is, you know, we're all here because we're building and running businesses of lots of different variations, sizes, focuses, services, products, the whole shebang. And if there's one thing that I think probably binds us all, is it, well, a couple of things really. One is that we take responsibility for our lives, and the second is that we get shit done. Now, for me, if the term mumpreneur is, I guess, thrown my way in a way that would try and keep me in a box or try and keep me small, I'm not going to buy into it. I'm actually going to take responsibility and be the version of myself I want to be regardless. And if that's small at sometimes, because that's what works for me, if that's big and bold at other times, because that's what works for me, then that's what I'm going to do. So I actually feel as though we are a perfect group to start to define and set our own definition of what a mumpreneur actually is, and to break down perhaps that small portion of people, that percentage of people who may simply see it as a hobby. I mean, I'm under no illusion that there are people who see it that way, but aren't we a group of women who want to, you know, take responsibility and change people's perception and live up to our own definition of what a mumpreneur is? I don't know, that's what I was thinking. But anyway, that was my first kind of comment in response to some of the things I've heard. But really, I mean, I think the term mumpreneur is a great benefit for us, and it's something that we should embrace. Now, putting aside that, you know, it is on Facebook and it's referred to a lot on Facebook, and therefore if it's on Facebook and it's also in the dictionary, it must be real and must be legitimate. We can take a more serious approach to this particular argument. And I am going to get a little bit woo-woo, a little bit psychological on you because I just can't help myself. The first thing is, I think mumpreneur, it captures all of us. Now, when I say that, I don't mean all of us as in you, me, and other women doing this motherhood and business entrepreneur gig. I mean, it captures all of me, okay? It describes two very, very significant parts of who I am. Not what I do, although you can go and start making some assumptions about that, but who I am. And speaking of which, who I am really, when we talk about that, we're talking about identity. And there is enormous amounts of research in the area of psychology that goes back many, many years. It's one of our longest standing kind of psychological areas of investigation, and repeatedly showing us how important identity is to our well-being. If you are comfortable with your identity, it supports your well-being. If you're not, then it doesn't. Now, I guess in this area, we know that identity is formed very, very early in our lives. Usually we start really getting a sense of who we are before we're 5, which is a bit scary when we're all mothers and thinking about all the ways we stuffed up before our kids were 5 years of age. Then we hit adolescence, and, you know, of course, that's a pretty tumultuous time. It is a time where one of the most pivotal developmental milestones during adolescence is to actually rework your identity, to separate yourself from what identity has been kind of projected onto you and expected of you by your family and your friends and those kinds of things, and to start question who you are and become the person you're meant to be. Because what actually makes up identity is that every identity has a set of values, behaviours, beliefs, attitudes and goals associated with it. And it says as much about who we are as it does about what's important to us, how we behave and how we spend our time. And so when you think of the experience of becoming a mother, and this is kind of where I get all excited, this is where I spend a lot of my time in my working life. Motherhood is a significant period of our lives where we undergo a significant shift or an addition to our identities. And I mean, just as a bit of a segue, it's really, really important that we do that and we begin that process during pregnancy. And we know that the more women start to identify as being a mother during their pregnancy, the better their psychological adjustment to motherhood when baby actually arrives. So identity in this instance, and even just generally, has been shown time and again to be so important to our well-being. So when we become a mother, we also then start to, I guess, take on new values, behaviours, beliefs, attitudes and goals that we decide are relevant to that identity of mother. Now, the funny thing is we also do this as entrepreneurs. Now, entrepreneurs in itself is an identity that possesses its own values, behaviours and goals. And the interesting thing is that the more you're conscious of what your values, behaviours and goals are as an entrepreneur, the more successful you're likely to be. So being successful in motherhood and entrepreneurship requires the taking on of those identities wholeheartedly. Because when we don't, we wobble. And this is exactly one of the reasons why big corporates pay me in my Ambitious Mothers, which is one of my business names, role, to provide executive coaching to their sweet C women during pregnancy, maternity leave, and return to work. Now, bear with me, because I realise I'm not talking about entrepreneurs just at the moment, but the principles apply. Because what we know is many women, particularly at that level of their careers, drop out. They either don't return, or they return and take off because they can't make it work, or they return and they step down in the roles. And now this actually still happens in those workplaces who are very progressive and have flexible work arrangements. So it tells us that there's something more to this picture in terms of supporting women to be everything that they want to be and to have everything that they want to have. I'd love to say that those organisations were just simply wise and thought, yep, let's provide a maternity coaching program to support women. But unfortunately, it's not the case. They've implemented it because the strategies that they had in place, which were pretty absent, to be honest, were resulting in losing their talent to motherhood. They were losing these amazing professional women because these women could not reconcile those parts of themselves. And so, as I said, they either didn't return, or when they did return, they left soon after, or they returned and stepped down. Now, mothers who are business women, entrepreneurs, or even career women, whether they identify with the term mumpreneur or not, consider both of the parts of themselves as critical to their identity. So motherhood, or mother and entrepreneur, mother and career woman. And I guess my question is also, why should one exist without the other? And why should one be discussed without the other? Those organisations have discovered that when they support women to be the integrated version of themselves, to not have to compartmentalise, I'm this person in this world and that person in that world, that they are psychologically in flow and they actually produce the best results. They're happiest at work and they're happiest at home. And so when we apply this term, or these principles, and this research to the concept of mothers who are building and running businesses, the term mumpreneur is exactly that. It integrates all of these significant parts of our identity and the values, behaviours and goals that are associated with both. We can live and work and breathe and mother and all of that stuff as an integrated version of ourselves rather than a psychologically split version of ourselves. And this is important as well because it takes energy to live a compartmentalized life. When we talk about showing up, and this is a term that we use very much in the entrepreneur world, you know, how do you show up and who do you show up as? Well, I haven't ever seen show up just as this, just show up as this part of yourself. No, we talk about showing up as all of ourselves. And that is why the term mumpreneur is extremely important as well. And on that note, I guess there's the little side, 1 minute. And on that note, there's that side issue that at the end of the day, when we want to market ourselves as mompreneurs, we are sending a message that this is all of us. And we will attract those people who respect that and admire. Okay, I'll finish. So my last statement, the term mumpreneur finally publicly allows us to not choose to be one or the other. We can break down the boxes that women have time and time again been placed in. We can be both nurturing and boundaried, playful and strategic. We can set the tone, and we can define what mumpreneur is. And let's be all about ourselves and have it all too. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much, Kirsten. So that was really good. So you're focusing on the fact that we need to embrace all of ourselves and not be multiple personalities. So
Yep.
just to sum up, we had Jo and Kate doing the wonderful argument on that word mumpreneur is keeping us small, that it's about being a hobbyist and perhaps a little bit start-uppity, and that we're really not embracing ourselves as well as we could be. And we
Not to
had
mention
Kerry.
asking the awful truth, Lisa.
That's right, was masking the awful truth. And then we had the wonderful Kerry and Kirsten arguing that the word mumpreneur actually allows us to embiggen what mums are, to step into business, and by embracing both roles that we're actually going to be more successful and better as we go forward. All right, okay, hands up, all those against. All those against. All right, hands up for those four. Four?
Oh, four.
Okay, all right, the against team wins.